Hello everyone, I hope that you are well and that you are surviving and getting through this most unique year of our entire lives. And I have developed some great friends over time, and I wanted to share one of them with you tonight. His name is Mark Friesen, and he ran with the People's Party of Canada. He was a candidate, and he has become a really strong advocate for freedom, for Canadian values, for our sovereignty, and he's very outspoken on issues like the UN and the Paris Climate Accord and what makes Canada great. So Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Laurelyn. It's a little strange me being on the other side of this
yes.
thing that we do, because you've been on my stream a number of times, and
a number of times.
I'm actually one of those guys that doesn't go on to other people's streams. I seem to be the one that always invites everybody to mine. So it's kind of refreshing to be on the other side of this. It's kind of cool.
Well, I am so glad you're here. Now, if people want to watch you, because you're on a lot, right? You go on, you live stream, and you talk to all kinds of guests. Salim is a regular on your show. Where can someone find you?
Yeah, so I have my YouTube platform under Grizzly Patriot. You can find me there, but my live streams are of course through StreamYard, as yours is, and I go cross platform. So I got 3 Facebook platforms, Periscope / Twitter, and then of course YouTube. So you can find me on Facebook, my regular Mark Friesen profile, and then you can find me at Forum for Canadian Sovereignty, the group, or the page. Sometimes I can't do them all at the same time. I get restricted to 5 at once. So sometimes it's the page, sometimes it's the group for Forum for Canadian Sovereignty. And then I have my PPC page, which is still active, and I still use that one. So, and then my Twitter, of course.
You're everywhere.
I try to get on as much as possible. I haven't been on, as regular as I was during the winter, because of course we were quite slow business-wise in the winter. Now I'm so busy, it's hard to find the energy at the end of the day to then go live and do these things. But I still try to get on at least a couple of times a week. And Salim Mansour is gracious enough to join me every Friday night, and we have a discussion that's topical. And so, yeah.
Well, he's amazing. And you guys are patriots. I call you patriots. And so you actually live in Saskatchewan, right?
I do.
Right in the middle of the country.
Kind of. We're still in the West. I think probably Winnipeg's a little closer to the middle of the country.
Oh,
but
okay.
Yeah, we are the heartland. We are the heartland.
Yes. What we're going to talk about in a little bit is an amazing thing going on July 1st in Ottawa. And I've got my ticket booked. You've got your ticket booked. I know a whole bunch of people who've got their tickets booked. And we are heading to Ottawa for the greatest July 1st celebration of all times. But before we get to that, Mark, I do not want to miss having a conversation with you about the UN, maybe Agenda 21, Agenda 30. You are someone who has invested a lot of time into this. And I wonder if you'd share with my audience the things that you're concerned about and that you see happening and what we should keep our eyes open for.
So, yeah, Laurelyn, I've spent, basically since 9/11, 9/11 sort of woke me up to something. I didn't know what, but it woke me up. And so I really started diving in, first of all, to radical Islamism, jihad, and that type of thing. I wanted to understand why that incident, why that situation, why that horrible event happened. Because I'm one of those people that I need to understand things, because it drives me crazy if I don't. And I didn't understand it, really on a basic level. So I really dove in, and what it led me to, learning about Islamism, learning about jihadism, and political Islam. And then it led me in a lot of different directions, of course. And then I got into the UN, and I got into globalism, and of course that was an enormous rabbit hole. And of course at that time there was a lot of conspiracy theory, and just as a side, I don't denounce conspiracy theory. I think it's important that people with a critical mind and attack these things with a critical mind, come up with theories of what this could possibly mean, whatever the issue is. So but you have to be careful, and you have to make sure you do have a critical mind. And, you know, because you can go down these paths, and if you go too far, then you might not be able to come back. You know, you go through this maze, and you pick out the things that, okay, that relates to this relates to that makes sense, this makes sense. Because at that time, anybody talking about Agenda 21, which is the first real, you know, agenda that I sort of latched onto and researched, by promoting it at that time, you were completely conspiracy theorist, tinfoil hat wearing, right-wing nut job, right? And that's how they framed it, and that's how they labeled people, even though it was reality. And even though, you know, when you research and you find that it's coming, these things are coming from their mouths, they're coming from their organizations. This is a real thing. Why are they, first of all, they're not promoting it so the public understands. They're not educating people. They're keeping it away from people, so much so that they have to label all of us conspiracy theories, who are the ones bringing it to the people. So I mean, I didn't promote it much because I didn't get any traction, because nobody was paying attention to it. But I kept learning, and I kept studying, and of course it evolved as well, this whole agenda. And it was going through development stages, and it went from Agenda 21 to Agenda 2030. And then, you know, there was some millennial goals. There was different terms, different names, different entities, different groups, different, you know, as it moved forward to when finally the last one in 2015, signed by Harper, was the last major agreement, which was the UN Sustainable Development Agenda, transforming our world.
It sounds great.
When you read the document, when you read the 17 goals, and you read the 169 targets that they want to achieve, I mean, it leaves the reader with the impression that of this glorious utopia that, you know, all problems will be solved. But if you actually transpose it onto the Communist Manifesto, it reads very much the same, just a lot prettier. And that's ultimately what it is. It's redistribution of wealth on a global scale, making all countries equally poor. Because what happens is they claim to want to rise up the second and third world to the same standards that we have, you know, in the West. Well, that's impossible. There's no way to do that. There's no mechanism. There's no wealth to do that. There's a finite amount of wealth based on resources, and I mean the global economy. All these things have to be considered. So what happens is everyone throughout the West, where the wealth is, where the majority of the wealth is, we get brought down considerably, while the second and third world rise up, you know, marginally. And then we find ourselves, if you look at target or goal number 10, it says they want the equality of countries and the promotion of equality within and among countries. So they want all countries being equal, equally poor, equally controllable. And this is from a global governance perspective. This is from a global entity. And there's a push right now for a parliament, a UN parliament. And so this is all moving in the direction of global governance. And so this is the whole model. And it's socialism, it's communism on a global scale. And then, you know, you talk about the New World Order. And for years, when you talked about it, you were, again, those are trigger words that, you know, the media, the politicians, they basically jump on you, call you a crazy right-wing nut job and conspiracy theorist and all that, just for stating the New World Order. But even though George H.W. Bush, the first Bush, openly talked about the New World Order, but so much so now, they've created a new website. The UN and some of the actors in the UN created the new website, unnwo.org. And so it's in the open, it's out there. But really what the New World Order means, and when you think about it, New World Order, it's really the convergence of communism and fascism with a healthy mix of Islamism, because with the destruction of the Western world and freedoms, you know, there's some religious ideologues and you know, Islamists that want to gain power through the destruction of the West and freedom and everything that the West represents. So you have this convergence of all of these, ideologies. And I mean, people wonder and try to, reconcile, well, why are capitalists, multinational companies teaming up with socialists and communists? Well, because that's the new world order, and they're all working together. And so you have communists and fascists, traditionally and historically have been at odds, but ultimately they're ideologically not at odds, because it's totalitarian, it's authoritarian. This is what and how they're going to achieve all of these global goals and create this utopia that the Sustainable Development Agenda claims to be achieving.
So what do you think is the reason that the people that have created this, agenda, what is it actually that they want? I mean, it does sound impossible when you hear it. It's an awful lot of work, but what is their ultimate goal? Is there something else?
Well, again, it's control, it's power, it's authoritarian, it's totalitarian. They want to control the masses. Like there's this, in their, a lot of people, there was a discussion I had read, I'm trying to remember who it was, but it was an interview I listened to a while back, and they're sort of talking about, people think that it's about money, right? With the elites, with the one percenters. They think it's about money, but it's not, because these one percenters, the Soros, the Rockefeller, the Rothschilds, these big bankers and all these folks, it's not about money. They already have more money than they'll ever be able to spend on anyone they've ever met, right? Like their money is literally endless. So it's not about money. It's not about wealth for them. This is about, and the gates of the world. This is about power. This is about legacy in these minds. And I'm not saying by any stretch that it's a good legacy, but it's their legacy, and it's their leaving their mark on the world. It's in a sort of psychotic way. But these people are, people also have to understand that these one percenters, these types, they're not like you and me, Laura Lynn. They're not like the average Canadian or the average American or the average human, for that matter. These people are so far out of reach and away from most people's day-to-day lives and values and things. It's hard for people to wrap their head around, what these people want.
Is it like a game? Do you think that we're like their soap opera, or we're their huge global chess game, and now it's just fun to cause chaos? It's just fun to disrupt.
There's enough people with good hearts, right, who think they're doing something that they believe in, and they think it's the right thing to do. But these puppets ultimately they're using the useful idiots to accomplish their goals, and I think that's part of it. I think just picture having all the money that you would ever need, and everything you've ever wanted, you have it times 10. What else would there be? I mean, at the end of the day, it's control. At the end of the day, it's power. And I mean, so you put yourself in their sort of frame of mind, which is hard, but yeah, it's a game.
Well, you think of these people like Soros and the kinds of things that he says, the hatred in his heart, even for Donald Trump, some of the quotes that he has made, you can see that hate fuels it. And also, like for someone like myself, I believe that there's good and evil, and that we are coming up to an epic battle. And where you've got Bill Gates with his agenda to vaccinate the whole world, and the technology that's coming our way to trace and to put little chips inside of our hand. And this is already happening in places like Sweden. The young people think it's super cool to be chipped. And you see that everything is changing.
Yeah, it's transforming our world, right? And this is, they've telegraphed all of this. I mean, this is the hard thing for me, Laura Lynn, is I thought when we got to this point, it would be easier. And really, I had hoped that there would be, some heavy opposition to it by now. There isn't. So that's discouraging, and that's frustrating for me. And then to watch it being put into place and using you know, the coronavirus, or using our First Nations to accomplish their goals, or, you know, using Black lives as a way to achieve their goals. You know, it's disgusting. But, you know, as I sit and I watch it, knowing and having known that it was coming, you know, I thought I'd be prepared, or more prepared. I'm still overwhelmed. But it comes from a position of frustration, because, you know, I understand that most people don't have the time or the inclination to study these things as much as, you know, myself or others have. But at the very least, you should go below the surface a little bit and try to understand how everything is connected. It's all connected. The Wu flu, the Black Lives Matter, the George Floyd incident, all of these things, the blockades that we went through before these things, you know, UNDRIP and that whole agenda. I mean, all of it is connected, and they tell us that they're connected. The gun grab, of course, that's another one that's related, and they tell us that that's part of the sustainable development and plays a large role. All of this is out there for people to see. So it's frustrating that it's all happening right under our nose, and people are somewhat oblivious to it. So that's, you know, that's been my passion for a long time now, is to educate the masses as to, you know, what's happening, connect some dots for them so they can understand. But you're absolutely right. It is ultimately a battle between good and evil is winning. I talk to people, and I've numerous times come to the analogy, it's a race. And right now we're actually just putting on our racing shoes, and they're, you know, already on their third lap. And so we have to get into the race, and we have to start making up some of this ground. And the only way we're going to do that is by educating and informing as many people as we can, and giving opposition to all of these things that are happening. And that's an extremely tough hill to climb, but we have to do it.
You know, Mark, I love when you're talking about how it's all connected, because, you know, I don't know if you know this, but I went down to a Black Lives Matters. I didn't actually know that's what it was. To be fair, I heard it was some sort of tribute to George Floyd, and I took it particularly hard. Like, some people say, oh, he's not even dead. And I'm like, okay, well, those are really good actors at his funeral that I saw. But I heard there was some tribute downtown, and I was with some people, and I knew I would be safe. And so I headed down there. So all of a sudden, as we're, you know, walking up towards the area, we know they're in front of the art gallery, I hear this roar, like a powerful sound. And as we get closer and closer, it's like, oh my gosh, those are all people. 3,000 people have gathered. So the speeches were pretty cool. I was looking for, like, some of it, you know, I thought it was, you know, there was some emotionalism. Some of it, I saw these kids asking for peace. I saw them asking for no violence. I saw them asking to ignore any other factions that had anything other than that Black Lives Matter in it, all sincerity. Then this kid gets up and he starts talking about, you know, Black Lives Matters. Then he starts saying, and then he starts talking about the LGBTQ movement and the Black trans lives. And then I went, there it is. Like, this is the UN. The UN and their global agenda to put the LGBTQ, like, to infiltrate everything with identity politics. And it's funny because at the same time that they want identity politics, they're bringing in all of these people groups that do not actually ascribe to LGBTQ ideology. So for instance, the Islamists, right? They don't, those two things should not be going together, but all of a sudden you've got this mix happening, right? And so I was watching a video yesterday, and I put it up on my Facebook, and it's of this precious African-American gal, and she is very pro-Trump, and she was listing all the reasons that she is so for Trump, and boy, did she make a lot of sense. So she's telling these white women this stuff. And then she says, and I don't get it. Why are they mixing Black Lives Matters with the LGBTQ? Like, everybody knows we're not, you know, we really don't go that way. And I thought, like, that's the true movement. That's Black Lives Matters had a group that embraced it because they wanted to honor Black lives and they wanted to end injustice and racism and things that are not right in the world. But it has been taken over.
Well, it's completely been taken over and co-opted, and the problem is that's, you know, that's what the globalists do. They hijack these things. They hijack these groups. I mean, all I have to do is anyone that's watching can go do this. Go to the Black Lives Matter website. And I did a stream on it the other day, because when you go to the Black Lives Matter website, the first thing you see, the first thing that I was introduced to, the first time I've ever been to that website was sustainably transformative, right? That's what it says on the Black Lives website, which is exactly the language that the UN uses to sell their agenda, the Sustainable Development Agenda, transforming our world. So, you know, it just the language that's used, you know that it's orchestrated from that level. And then you go through that website and you go to the About page and you read through the About, and it talks less about Black lives and more about, you know, the communist agenda and the destruction of the nuclear family and the pro-trans and the LGBTQ supremacy and all of these things that, you know, just scream UN agenda. And so then you dig a little deeper and you go to the donate page, and the donate page redirects you to Act Blue, which is a website that supports the Democratic National Committee and raises funds for their campaign. And, you know, you can see where this all goes. And it's like, this is all a farce. All of this is a facade. And they've, you know, and you're right. There are people, not just Black people, but people in general that want justice, and they see injustice and they want to react, and they want to support people that feel that there's injustice. And in some cases, yes, there is injustice. In some cases, there isn't injustice, not to the level that they're promoting, but it doesn't matter anymore because it's never about reality. It's always about perception and the narrative to sell their overall and achieve their overall goals. And it's just, it's so sad that this is, you know, so many people are being guided by the nose, and so many people are, you know, because people don't take the time to think critically. They just want to belong to something, and they're being used like useful idiots, like Lenin referred to them as back in the day, or Hitler referred to them back in the day. You know, all of these totalitarian authoritarians with their goals, they use the same tactics over and over and over again. And we're watching it in real time, Laura Lynn. We are living in such a historical time in the history of the planet, never mind just, you know, in this millennium. We're really truly living in historical times, and we are in a battle against good and evil. There's no question about it.
I appreciate you bringing that up, because they're also talking about removing the heteronormative sort of stereotypes of family, right? And basically, you know, messing with what we would consider, you know, our way of viewing life, you know, mums and dads and lots of kids and all of that, the natural way. And so this is their goal, is to actually make a problem with that.
Well, and this is it. And so, you know, we talk about the natural way, and ultimately this is why I still have hope, because ultimately their goals go against human nature. They go against nature. They go against, you know, our natural being, right? Like we naturally, as humans, want to procreate. We naturally want to have a family and a nucleus. And so everything that the communist agenda or the Communist Manifesto or the Marxist view is the destruction of that. So they're going against nature. And so ultimately, I think once people are negatively affected on an individual level en masse, that the natural response will then come to light. And when it does, people like yourself and myself and others have to be there.
And I mean, when you talk about the language that was being used, this is the Black Lives Matter website, And if you go into about, join the movement to fight for freedom, liberation, and justice by signing up for updates. That sounds like us, so I think.
Join the global movement, right? So now all of a sudden, Black Lives Matter, which was, we thought, and most people thought, was an American thing based on American injustice on the Black community, when in actual fact the data and the numbers don't support that narrative. Doesn't matter. Now all of a sudden we have protests in the UK, we have protests throughout Europe for Black Lives Matter. They're very effective. They are very effective. You got to give them that.
Yes, and with everything that I've been dealing with, in the last couple of years, this language, we are a collective of liberators who believe in an inclusive and spacious movement. And we also believe that in order to win and bring as many people with us along the way, we must move beyond the narrow nationalism that is all too prevalent in Black communities. We must ensure we are building a movement that brings all of us to the front. So you're kind of like, you're kind of wondering about it all. Then in the next it says, we affirm the lives of Black, queer, and trans folks, disabled folks, undocumented folks, folks with records, women, and all Black lives along the gender spectrum. So when this, young African-American girl is caught right in the heart of where Black lives live, and she's going, and what has this got to do with LGBTQ? So this is where they're intermingling a whole bunch of stuff, and then that there is money behind this. And of course, when you see, as you were saying, that money has been infused. I read somewhere, like a mega amount of money is going to this movement.
Black Lives Matter really just turns into another NGO, right? It's just added to the list of NGOs.
Right. You go to the donate fund, like you were saying, and it takes you, once you donate, I think you're going to an Act Blue, right? And Act Blue is basically funding the democratic movement of the United States of America. You go into Act Blue and, you're funding Joe Biden.
You're funding the Democratic National Convention or Commission. So, it's all connected, and it's all leftist. It's all, ultimately, the Green New Dealers. They're all connected. It's all a movement. It's all bigger than Black lives, I'll tell you that much. It's bigger than white lives. It's bigger than all of our lives. And the interesting thing I find about all of this is, the left and the activists and the Antifa types, they all claim to be against the system. They all claim to be against the man. They claim to be against, oppression and, the state and what it represents. But they are the useful idiots for that same state, for that same movement, for that fascist movement, that global movement of fascism. They're supporting it. They're the ones helping to push this through. And it's not even the leaders of Antifa, because they are operatives. They're working for the agenda. It's the useful idiots that, and sometimes maybe I shouldn't say it in such a way that's derogatory, because a lot of people, I think, are just impressionable. They're easily influenced. They themselves are marginalized as youth. There's no good jobs for these people. There's a lot of issues that send young people into these organizations, and it's all consequential. It's all, in response to all of these things, and they end up supporting the politicians and the globalists that are creating the issues that have sent them into these protest groups. It's almost laughable if it wasn't so serious.
Well, I had an interesting thing happen today, and that was that, a friend from basically sort of Kelowna area lost her job that she's had for over a decade, because she had some posts that had to do with highlighting the sort of the infrastructure and the background of Black Lives Matter. And so what happened was some other people, you know, that she was talking to, they didn't agree with her. They thought it was racist to even question the organization and to even question where the money goes or where the money comes from. That was racist in their view. So what they did was a concerted effort to have her fired. And you know, Mark, we're living in that day and age, aren't we, where you pay a high price for your freedom and truth.
I just went through that myself, Laura Lynn, last week. Our mayor here in Saskatoon, Charlie Clark, he's a leftist, and I would argue he's probably bordering on communist. But at any rate, he put up a post on Facebook in support of Black Lives Matter, and then, of course, you know, did the whole kneeling bit and submitting to this mob, and then made the comment that yes, there is systemic racism, and we're all responsible, and you know, essentially promoting this whole narrative. So I just responded on his post, you know, basically saying, well, if you're saying that there's systemic racism and you are in the system, doesn't that then make you the racist rather than the people who, you know, are just listening to you, kind of thing? And not only that, if there is systemic racism in the system, I would argue that the discrimination and the racism that you see is against white heterosexual middle-aged men. You know, and I've experienced that firsthand in when I applied for corrections in 1990. I was told not even to bother to apply because there's an A list, a B list, and a C list, and I'll be on the C list because I'm white and male. Where the A list is female Native applicants, the B list was Native or female applicants, and the C list was for the rest of us that didn't make the cut. So, I mean, that's built-in systemic racism right there. If that's what you want to talk about, then let's talk about it. So anyways, I put this on a comment, and Antifa ran wild with it. And so instead of coming after me personally and engaging in a debate or engaging in discussion or whatever, calling me a racist like you normally do, no, they actually went straight to my business on Facebook and Google, and they, you know, attempted to destroy my online reputation of my business, of which has been, we've worked very hard to keep it at, you know, the highest you can be rated. So, you know, of course, that affects algorithms online and how you're rated on Google and where you fit in search engine optimization. All these things are connected, and then third-party websites. So very detrimental potentially to my business. And they know this. And so it was actually all of the people that follow me on my YouTube channel and social media, they all sort of banded together in defense and went into my Facebook page and Google and offset all of the negative recommendations and the negative comments to then keep my rating to where it needs to be. So it was heartwarming to see that response, that people come together to defend somebody who's under attack. But that is the world we live in. That is what we're faced with. We are in a war. You know, it might not be bloody yet, but it sure has negative consequences to the people who stick their head up above, you know, the sand to be chopped off. Like, it
sure has. Like, I am so grateful. I mean, I am unhirable. I came to that understanding, you know, a little bit ago. I am absolutely unhirable. The only way that I can get a regular job in life is to completely shut up and shut down and refuse to do and say what I'm saying right now. And I cannot do that. And so I am so grateful that there are people that are choosing to say, you know what, we can't say what you're going to say, Laura Lynn, and what you're saying, Mark Friesen, we can't say that, but we are willing to support you. And so that's great.
I had so many messages, private messages, of people that said exactly that, you know, I can't step out of this or I'll be fired or I'll be impacted. But it's refreshing to see a business owner actually stand up to this nonsense. And you know, I mean, I'm risking my livelihood, obviously, but it's too important. And you know, at the end, I think righteous wins. And I think there's enough people that can support people like us when those attacks happen, that we should be able to weather the storm. I mean, you know, from a family perspective, from a sustainability we'll say, of my family and ability to make a living, I have to defend it. But I can't, like you said, I can't stop doing what I'm doing. I'd go crazy if I did. I would, in fact, you know, my whole being would be impacted, in my self-esteem, because if I know something is happening and do nothing about it, I mean, what does that say about a person?
Absolutely. Yep, Mark, you know what you're talking about is it's a calling. Like, it really is a calling. When you feel something that powerful, it is it completely dominates your entire life, to the point where you know that it's this, or you can't breathe unless you do what you're called to do. And thankfully, there are those in our society that know that they can't do what we're doing, so they are willing to share and to give out of the abundance of their heart, and to help us to do what we do. And so that is where we've got to. We don't have Trudeau's $595 million that he spreads to trusted media that is literally bought media. That's what he's done. He's bought the media, so you don't know what's true. You don't know which way's up with the mainstream media. They're all bought. They have bowed to a lack of integrity. They've lost all character. They've lost all courage. They don't even know what that is anymore. The only ones out here fighting on the lines is people like yourself and I, true patriots who will not bow to the establishment. And so that's what I love about you and what you do all the time. Now, before I let you go, can you tell me about what the vision is for July 1st? Because somebody watching right now might say, you know what, I like these people and I want to be where Mark and Laura-Lynn are on July 1st.
Yeah, so I mean, it was really simple, actually. You know, of course, I'm paying attention to what's happening, and all of a sudden, a while back there, the government came out with the announcement that Canada Day is canceled, and we're going to have a virtual Canada Day, which I thought was a bit ironic given the set of circumstances we're in. You know, we're very much virtual Canada. We're very much a post-nation state. We're very much don't have an identity, according to Trudeau. So I just decided at that moment, okay, well, if you are going to cancel Canada Day, I am going to resurrect Canada Day. And we're going to promote Canada Day in Ottawa on Parliament, and we're going to hold our own Canada Day in defense of Canada and what it represents. And so, you know, we started it, and it was basically, I put it out there as an idea because I really believe that, you know, as much as I support all of these local protests and things that happen, and these small groups in all these little towns and cities that get together and protest, at this point, I see them as rather ineffectual, because I don't think, number one, that the government is going to respond to our protest. They don't care about what we have to say. They don't care about anything. They have an agenda they're committed to, and they will do anything to achieve the goals of that agenda. But what's important is that we stand up en masse with enough people that can affect opinion, can affect the narrative, can push through this narrative, because there is no opposition to any of this that's happening, Laura-Lynn, on any meaningful level. The media is in the tank. The institutions are in the tank. Our schools are in the tank. You know, Hollywood, TV, all of it. It's all promoting this. And where's the opposition? Well, the opposition is here. And ultimately, it's the people that have the power to take it back. We, the people, have the power. We have to exercise that power. And in order to exercise that power, you have to motivate people. You have to educate people. You have to, you know, get the message out and bust through the narrative. The only way to do that is by coming together en masse. So the media can't ignore that there's 20,000 people on Parliament Hill on a Canada Day that our government canceled, that refuse to bow down or submit to this. Wow. And then the rest of the Canadians maybe get inspired. Maybe they get motivated to finally say, you know what? I don't like what's happening either. I'm going to join this group. And that's sort of the whole idea around the Forum for Canadian Sovereignty, which is my think tank or forum that I created with Salim and a few others. That's sort of one of the organizers or the organizing entities of this protest. And that is, again, to, you know, we because of the Wu flu, we couldn't do what we had originally set out to do, which is to have town halls and speaking engagements across the country. We'll still get there, but because of the whole coronavirus, we had to, you know, put it on hold. And then, you know, we just thought, well, let's use it for Canada Day. We'll motivate lots of people, and we can come together and we can educate, we can inform, but mostly we can show the rest of the country, wow, look at that. That's impressive. What are they talking about? What have I missed? What should I pay attention to? And just to give opposition to this. So that was sort of my idea, and it's gained a life of its own. And you know, I'll be completely honest. Because of my past experiences with Yellow Vest and to a lesser degree the PPC, but all of these groups, you know, we're on the right, Laura Lynn. We're on the right of the political spectrum, and we all really cherish personal freedom, individuality, individual freedom, our own ideas. We're not collectivists, right? We're not group thinkers. We are individuals. Because of that, it makes it very hard to organize and to unite together. The left has a much easier job of doing that because they all group think, and it's all about the collective, and it's all about the revolution. So I just took the approach, we're going to decentralize the organization of this protest, let the people do what they have to do, let them promote the agenda that they have or the issues that they have, and there's many of them, and let them promote this whole thing, and we'll come together in Ottawa. We'll come together on Parliament Hill with the different issues that are affecting people differently. But ultimately, it's under freedom. And we all can agree, or most Canadians agree, that freedom is important and we cherish freedom. And so that's the whole idea. That's the whole way I've sort of tried to promote this. So it's taken on a life of its own, and that's great. And there's lots of other groups that are promoting and going to be there. And so I have to try to get it out there how important it is that the masses show up to this. It has to be huge. It has to be optically big to get the attention. Because again, it's not about changing government direction, because they're not going to change regardless of what we do, unless there's a critical mass of people across the country that are opposing this. And then there will be politicians that join us in the movement to oppose this.
I love
and
it.
It's working, because we can see now, even with politicians that I somewhat disagree with or have concerns about, I'll use Leslyn Lewis as an example. Here is a politician running for the leadership of the Conservative Party who's actually talking about globalism and actually denouncing globalism and promoting the idea of Canada first in an establishment party that is, to this date, unheard of. And again, I have concerns with some of the things that Leslyn brings to the table in regards to what she's saying, but at least it's being talked about. And so it's working. We just have to keep doing it. We just have to keep moving the dial. And through this Canada Day protest, I hope to springboard more discussion, more information to a lot of Canadians that need to be exposed to the information.
And Mark, did I hear that you're going to shave your beard off if 10,000 people show up? Because that's incentive.
Yeah, if there's roughly 10,000, I don't know how to count that many people, but you know, roughly 10,000 people, I have agreed that I'll shave this muskrat off my face on stage.
I love it. I love it. Hey, well, thanks for sharing with me all about Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and also your thoughts on BLM and everything that's going on, and some of the scary things that we're all facing in the world. And I can't wait to see you in Ottawa, Mark. It's going to be a great reunion. So many Patriots are going. We want to stand on guard for Canada, and we want God to keep our land glorious and free. And so I just thank you for being one of the greats.
Hear, hear, Laura Lynn, and thank you. You know, you're always an inspiration. If I get a little bit down and a little bit disencouraged or whatever, all I have to do is listen to what Laura Lynn's doing, and boom, I'm back at it and ready to go.
That's so awesome. Thank you, Mark. All right. Well, have an absolutely wonderful night, and we'll see you very soon.
Sounds good. You too.
All right. Take care, brother. Bye-bye.